Well, I lived it for 25 years before I could write about it. So
Right.
It is about the 25 years I spent in the mental health system. So it was a long road.
Today's guest is Sarah Fay, a memoirist, writing coach, and Substack strategist extraordinaire. Her debut memoir, Pathological, tells the story of her 25-year journey through the mental health system. And though it took a long time to live Pathological, it did not take long to write it and to get it published.
My dream when I was in New York, I was in my 20s. And I used to dream that I was, I'd sort of like daydream about this on the subway, going to work. So I used to dream that an agent would call me and say, I'm halfway through your book. I love it. Don't talk to anyone else.
Sarah manifested her dream agent like a scene out of a movie, just like she had imagined during the subway daydreams of her 20s. It's one of those magical, inspiring publishing moments that you just love to hear about.
So Substack has completely transformed me as a human, and it's transformed so many of my clients. Like, it's made me far less jealous of other writers. It's made me way more supportive. It's made me just a better human.
Sarah shares how Substack has been a game changer for her creatively, professionally, and even personally. She gives us some fantastic Substack tips from her expert POV. Plus, we dig into craft, structure, serialization, PR, and more. This was such an awesome, energizing conversation. You guys are going to love it. So let's dive in. There's nothing to writing. All you do is sit down at a typewriter and bleed. Welcome to The Bleeders, a podcast and support group about book writing and publishing. I'm writer and podcaster Courtney Kosak, and each week I'll bring you new conversations with authors, agents, and publishers about how to write and sell books.
Hi, I'm Sarah Fay. I'm the author of Pathological and Cured the Memoir, and I'm also a Substack strategist on Substack Writers at Work.
When did you first identify as a writer?
So I always say it was never even a question. I don't ever remember making the conscious decision to become a writer. I just was. And it was never well, I shouldn't say that. There was one moment when I was in high school and I told my father, who was a lawyer, that I was going to be a lawyer. And he said, "Oh God, don't do that." So then after that, it was just part of it. And I went down the path of the most literary you can get, which was I was a poet living in New York, which is just a dismal existence in terms of financial security. But it was great. So I've done a lot of different types of writing, which has been wonderful. So it's been a long career.
What's your all-time favorite book?
Oh my gosh. I was just thinking about this question. My answer is always Brothers Karamazov, Dostoevsky. And it's a particular translation of it, because what a lot of people don't realize is Dostoevsky's really funny. And Brothers Karamazov is hilarious, but I mean, it just isn't read that way. Everything's read very tragic. So it's that one, but The Great Gatsby. I teach in a university, so I tend to teach the same books. And those aren't always my favorite books, because that can be a little bit misleading. If you try to get students to like the books you like, it can be awful. But The Great Gatsby has always been one.
Just like the world. What do you love about The Great Gatsby?
I think it's also the mythology of it. But when I first read it in high school, I was totally in love with it. And so it's always been there. And I reread it. I also reread every year Edith Wharton's House of Mirth.
Oh.
So I'd like to, some books, I reread Brothers Karamazov every year, and I reread House of Mirth every year. And mainly it's just to see how I've changed between the readings of it, and how the characters strike me and how different it is. So House of Mirth, the first time I read it, I was bawling, crying. If you haven't read it, it's about Lily Bart, and it's basically a woman's plight in high society in the late 19th century. And so she is unmarried, doesn't want to marry, and she has this horrible descent into drug addiction and she dies. But she makes all the wrong choices. And you're like, no, don't do that. It's Jane Austen gone very bad. But anyway, when I first read it, I just identified as her as this really out of control person. And then later, years later, I just had such a different, I just felt bad for her, but I wasn't her
Uh-huh.
anymore. Anyway,
Like you were like, oh, the societal part is maybe part of the problem.
yeah, definitely.
I'm just curious, have you read The Artful Edit? Isn't that
Yes.
about Gatsby?
Yep. She does a really great job of breaking that down. I love Susan Bell, and I teach that book. So I teach creative nonfiction at Northwestern, and I love using
Uh-huh.
that book because she breaks down writing in a way that I always have. So I always separated revision, which is for content, with editing, which is
Yeah.
for style. She just calls it the macro edit and the micro edit, but I love it. And it's
Mhm.
so fundamental to writers, and so few people do it.
Yeah, and I love that deconstruction of the
Yeah.
book of The Great Gatsby is so
Yeah.
fun. What's your dream writing routine?
That's a really good question. Well,
Have
what
you
came to
achieved it?
mind? What's that?
Have you achieved it?
I mean, I have. Well, it's kind of interesting. So I have so probably for 8 years, at least solid 8 years, I woke up every single day and wrote every single day, 365 days a year, holidays, everything. And that was my routine. And then now I'm running a business, like a hardcore business. And it is changed. And so now actually my ideal routine would be getting back to my other routine. So I have not stopped because I still have an author stack,
Uh-huh.
but it's really interesting to be on the other side of what so many people felt. I mean, I teach in a university, but that's a pretty cushy, it's a really cushy job. You hear professors
Yeah.
complain, like, I don't even know what they're talking about. It's an extremely cushy job. You have a lot of free time. And now it's
Uh-huh.
just, I mean, I'm full blown running like a six-figure business, and it's just like, it's all the time. And I'm obsessed with it. And that's great. But I
Uh-huh.
used to only be obsessed with my writing. And I mean, we can talk about this, but there was also, I put out 2 books in 2 years. So I think also it was just a kind of maybe not burnout, but maybe it was just like, okay, maybe
Uh-huh.
I do need a break. And so, yeah, it would be getting back to what I used to do, I think, but maybe that wasn't the best routine. Who knows?
So, okay, the next question is what is your real writing routine? And I was just watching one of your Substacks and you have your life
Oh,
scheduled like
yeah.
every minute is spoken for.
Totally. It is. It is. I do not know the word free time. In fact, I dislike free time. I don't understand free
I
time.
understand
I don't
that.
understand
Yeah.
free time. I don't understand hobbies. I do not understand how people have hobbies. I'm like, what are you doing? You're wasting time with
You're
a ball or yarn or whatever you're doing. But I get it. Like it's just not my thing. So yeah, I love to be, and that's something, it's the block schedule that
uh-huh.
Cal Newport, who's at MIT, he talks about. And anyway, when I discovered that, there are just some people who should not have blank space, and I am one of them. And so, if you give me an empty calendar, I am like, I don't know what to do with myself.
Uh-huh.
So, as long as my brain is very directed, like we're doing this there. Now, I don't always follow my calendar to the minute. I have to say that. So I don't want people to think that I'm so regimented that I never get off track or I never go outside of that. I do. It's just there as the parameters.
Do you usually stay pretty close?
Pretty close. I mean, today I'll move it around according to what I actually did, and I don't have a way of comparing them.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes they are wildly different, but usually it's because I took really long on some task. I took a long time setting up posts or something like that, and so I went over. Usually it's because I underestimate the amount of time something will take me. Almost always I underestimate. So that's pretty much it. It's never like I was flaking off, and that's not why I didn't hold to it. Although every once in a while I'll be walking and I'll just be like, I don't care about dinner. I just want to walk. I love walking. So I'm just like, I want to walk forever. Yeah.
That's so funny. So, but you're doing mostly business writing now, right? That's like a lot of your time.
So a lot of my time is just running Substack writers at work. And then I just started a school that's kind of attached to it. So getting to teach creative
Mhm.
writing. So it's called From Craft to Career. So basically using Substack as a training ground for writers, which I think it's amazing in that respect. When we
Oh,
think about pre 1990s, no one went to an MFA program. No one ever did a workshop ever.
Yeah.
And so those are our best writers. So my theory is that they learned on the job. A lot of them were journalists. And so Substack has given us this amazing place where I can do the same teaching I've been doing and then also bring in other amazing teachers that I know, have us teach in there. And then we use Substack as the lab, basically. So right now I'm teaching voice with Maria Hornbacher, who's just an amazing teacher, an amazing writer. And so we're team teaching a voice class. And basically what it is they then get to, the practicum is on Substack. So the idea being not only is it like better than an MFA because you're getting practical experience, but like maybe you would be paid for it. How great would that be? You know, you're not stuck in this MFA program or whatever it is. But so, yeah, so kind of building that and then Substack writers at work. And then I do one-to-ones for Substack too. That actually takes up a great deal of my time. And I love doing it, but I've maxed out. I'm booked a month or two in advance and I just can't even keep up with the demand. So, and I love it. I do really love it. But again, it's like not scalable. Like I cannot do it all the time. And there's only one of me. So trying to find ways to create cohorts where I can do multiple people at once. And then there's my author stack. But there's also, you know, I have 2 books. So Pathological, my first memoir, came out during the pandemic. And it was just a bad time for a book to come out. It was just a really bad time.
Yeah.
So basically, and especially my book, which is about, you know, 6 different misdiagnoses or diagnoses that I received. And I kind of think of all diagnoses, psychiatric diagnoses, as being somehow off the mark or misdiagnoses because they aren't reliable or scientifically valid. So that came out at a time when pretty much the media was just saying, go get a diagnosis, get your child a diagnosis. Everyone needs a diagnosis. And it made sense because everyone was suffering, rightfully so. We were in the middle of a global pandemic. There wasn't anything biologically wrong with you if you were anxious and depressed during the pandemic.
Right.
So, but here I had just put out this book really critiquing diagnoses. So it did really well, and that's great. But, you know, of course, I wanted the like 70,000 copies sold or whatever. And it did sell better than 99% of the books, but I still am really, like, I haven't given up on it. So I'm actively still promoting it, even though publishers really do us a disservice. You have 3 months to sell a book.
I know, that's so ridiculous.
It's awful. And then you're on the backlist and it's like, bye-bye. Like no one promotes you, nothing. And then they're just on to the next book, on to the next book. And no wonder they don't make any money. I mean, they do make money, but like no wonder they don't have a business model that works well because they just give up too soon.
It's a terrible business model. I want to go deep on that. Okay. One quick question before we go. One piece of writing that makes you jealous you didn't write it.
Probably Joanne Beard's The Fourth State of Matter. Have you ever read that? It is an amazing essay. Maybe we can attach a link to the PDF or to the book. It's in her book, Boys of Our Youth, but it's just a stunning. I mean, it's just the perfect personal essay. That's one of them. There are sometimes some Substacks that I post that I don't wish I had written, but I'm kind of jealous of. But I think jealousy and envy is like the lowest, the most base emotions for writers. And I feel it. Let me tell you. Yeah, I do.
No, I think you can use it. You can use it to like motivate you to be like, oh shit, okay, I want to drop that.
Yeah. Like the other day, actually, so I was with a client. I work with him every week and he's amazing. He had 400 subscribers when he came to see me. And we work every week on his writing too. So he really went all in. And so he has since he now has 4,000 in a year.
Oh, wow.
Like from 400 to 4,000. He became a featured Substack. He's a bestseller. Like it was just everything. He's got crazy connections on Substack. So it was just amazing. But we were working together and I had this moment of like, he gets to do that. We were doing one of his pieces and I wasn't jealousy of the piece, but it was funny exactly what you're saying. And I thought, okay, what is this saying for you to do?
Yes.
You gotta be paying more attention to your own stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so before we get into the book further, I'm curious about your education. You're talking about like DIY MFA is maybe a better path. I mean, but you did the whole, you have the MA, you have the MFA, you have the PhD.
I know whereof I speak.
So tell us, I mean, do you feel like you needed these things? Did Iowa live up to the fuss?
Yeah.
How did it help you form you?
Well, first of all, so I couldn't wait to get out of college. I went to Michigan. It wasn't Michigan's fault. It has nothing to do with that. But I was like, I can't wait to get in the real world. And then look at me. I spent like 10 years in
Same.
school. And then now I teach at a university. It just backfired clearly. But so, yeah, I mean, it was interesting. So I thought I needed an MFA as a poet. And so I went not to Iowa, but I went to a low residency program. And that is
Mhm.
different. I was living in New York. I did get into Columbia, but it was $80,000, which is ridiculous. Like, I'm a poet. What am I going to do with an $80,000
Yeah.
tab? And so I ended up doing that. And I think low residency programs where basically you work one to one with a mentor over the year and you only
Mhm.
go down twice a year for workshop. I've never liked workshops. I don't think they're very valuable. And so that was very alluring to me. But then I got my MFA and suddenly there was a glut of MFAs on the job market. So there were no jobs. And so I have a
Mhm.
gift for this. So then I went and I got a PhD in literature because I was reviewing books for the New York Times and writing for the Atlantic on arts and culture. And for some reason, well, part of that was I got funding. So I got paid to go to
Oh, that's
school.
great.
So it was basically bought me 6 years. And I spent 6 years really in this lovely land of literature, talking about things that no one talks about in the rest of the world, just this deep, these are geeky scholars, basically. So it's not
Mhm.
literary writers. So, yes, I do know the workshop and I know people there and people who teach there and got to know them, but I did not go to the workshop. But I also know many of
Oh,
my
it's separate.
yeah, they're separate. And it's funny because the workshop has this, it's got a lot of cachet, which I think is mostly undeserved, but mainly because my best friend was just, it destroyed her. Like the workshop just destroyed her. She's such a talented writer. It's just such a mean place. Like it is just not, it's not a mean place intentionally, but there are favorites. This is what's wrong with an MFA program, which is why I want to create this other thing is that you want the teacher's approval. It's a clicky thing, and there's always a kind of embraced style that's allowed, right? And if
Uh-huh.
you do anything other than that, and my friend did something other, and she just wasn't the darling. There's always a darling, and that's the person who's pushed, and that's the person who gets the big agent and the book deal, or the three people who do. Everybody
Yeah.
else has either stopped their lives and spent a lot of money to go to a program that is not going to get them connections. It is not going to get them a book deal. It is not going to get them a job because there are no more jobs. In academia, no one is hiring because they're cutting back. Oh, but I was going to say, so the Iowa Writers Workshop has this glossy, like beautiful day house is up on a hill over the Iowa River, and it's glass and it's lovely. And the PhD and creative nonfiction programs, now the creative nonfiction program has moved, but it's like down on the river. Like it's a
In like a
building.
barn.
It's awful. It's like a building that was designed to stop riots in the 70s. Like it is awful. So anyway, but I always like being the outsider and the underdog. I'm a big fan. I think it's really good to not be at, in some of these other places. And I think that is what Substack's doing. It's democratizing writing
Uh-huh.
in a way that I think really needs to be embraced because what it shows is actually you don't need the gatekeepers, right? I mean, you can if you want to go those routes. And I love traditional publishing. I love traditional media. I still write for them. I plan to put out all my books with them. But, there's this really interesting thing happening, which is that publishers don't really know how to sell books anymore. And that's
Mhm.
not a criticism of them. I think many of them would agree. They know how to sell books to bookstores. And once bookstores went away,
Mhm.
it's very hard to sell to individuals with social media, especially. It's challenging. And so, what Substack allows is I've just seen someone like David, who I just mentioned, like, whoa, he's just finding his people. That's what he did. He
Mhm.
found his stride as a writer and he found his people. And how amazing is that? I mean, that's just, and so now he's got he got pitched he got asked to meet with an agent. And he's meeting with her next week.
It's amazing, and hopefully and then those people will hopefully be there to buy your books, and it's just
Exactly.
such a nice funnel that we didn't used to have.
Yeah.
Okay, so I wanna return to Pathological. First books I feel like always have the best origin stories because people are usually working on them in some form for kind of ever. And then, it's like such a hero's journey. So I want to know about the evolution of the book.
Well, I lived it for 25 years before I could write about it. So it
Right.
is about the 25 years I spent in the mental health system. So it was a long road. But oddly, it has a weird origin story. So I don't remember. Oh, I ended up writing an essay and it was accepted by Long Reads. And so it's a long form
Oh.
essay and it was about brackets and loneliness and solitude and what's the difference. So it was a very theoretical essay and it didn't really mention mental illness. But then I thought, oh, okay, there's 13 punctuation marks. I'll write 13 essays. I'll just do all the other punctuation marks. And suddenly then my story of mental illness started coming out. And that was how
Ah.
it grew. So it was a collection of essays. I had an agent interested and she just said, essays don't sell. So she said, really, I would turn it into a memoir. So I did, and I wrote it in 5 months. I got an agent. I actually went to different agents. I like pitched 7, and they were all big heavy hitters. And my dream when I was in New York, I was in my 20s. And I used to dream that I was, I'd sort of like daydream about this on the subway, as I was going to work. So I used to dream that an agent would call me and say, I'm halfway through your book. I love it. Don't talk to anyone else. And that was like, I didn't have a book, mind you. Like that was just the dream of the writer. I just wanted to be a fancy writer. I think I had read that someone, he wrote The Art of Fielding. I can't remember his name now, but that had happened to him. So like, I wanted that to happen to
Uh-huh.
me. So then here I am, flash forward. It was 20 years later. And I had sent it out, this manuscript, to these 7 agents. And, one had responded and wanted to set up a meeting. And then the other, which was a big heavy hitter, was Sunday. We were like just in the pandemic. And it was like
Uh-huh.
cloudy and cold and in Chicago. And I get this email and it's from her. And she said, I'm 2/3 of the way through your book. I love it. Don't talk to anyone. I'm going to CC it gives me chills, but I'm going to CC my assistant and I want to set up a meeting. And so like that was my
You
first one.
manifested it.
Totally. It was really weird. It was just like, oh my God, it happened. So then I got her, and she was really great because she asked for no revisions, which is unheard of. The other thing was a couple of people had asked me to pull the punctuation parts of it. So it's a straight memoir. There are 3 strands. One
Uh-huh.
is my story of being in the mental health system, but then there are these 2 other strands to kind of alleviate that solipsism and narcissism that goes along with telling that kind of story. So basically, one is the history of the DSM, so the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, and how we got these diagnoses. And then the other is this sort of wacky love letter to punctuation, which is how it all started. And a lot of people said, you've got to cut the punctuation. Like it's not going to work for
No.
people. And my agent now, she's still my agent, and she said, no, 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 I love it. And I was like, you're my agent, let's go. And we sold it in about 6 weeks, even in the pandemic. And they asked for no revisions. I mean, it was just unheard of. It was just sort of the most amazing story and experience. No, we did end up revising it, and there were some other things that we thought would just tighten it, but it was amazing. It was just so it happened very, very fast. I wrote it fast, it got an agent fast, sold it fast.
I love that. When was the long reads essay that started it?
It was in 20, so it was in Best American too, which was really great, and that was in
Oh, that's amazing.
2022, so it must have been 2020 or 2021, now I can't remember, but my book came out in 2022, so it had to be sooner than that.
Really fast.
Yeah, it was all really fast and really recent.
Oh, I'm so curious. So had the idea of first of all, I would have thought I was gonna ask you about those threads, and I would have thought punctuation came at the end.
Yeah, it's funny because one criticism I got, this was from an agent, no, it was from an editor, so when we went to sell it, and I knew her, and so she had said, "Oh, the punctuation just feels forced, and it feels gamey." Like that, like what you're saying, like as if I added it later, and I was like, "No, it is the core."
No.
But anyway, so she's lovely, I won't say her name, but she's great.
It makes sense as a spine. I just thought you would have started with the
Yeah,
obvious, like, issue at hand, which is the mental illness stuff or
yeah,
whatever, lack thereof.
yeah, whatever it is.
Let's talk about the research because, the DSM threads, all the threads really required some sort of research. How did you approach that? And then did you research not only the history and stuff, but like did you pull your medical records and like how far did you take it?
So basically, the research, I mean, this is where my PhD paid off because I just learned, they taught me how to research and research very, very well
Uh-huh.
and very thoroughly. I mean, it's hardcore. When you get a PhD in English, it's no joke. Whereas they have PhDs in creative writing, which are sort of different. And that's only a couple of years or 3 years. But this is 6 years hardcore. And so I really knew how to do research. But what had happened was and the story is in the book, but it doesn't tell the kind of meta moment of it. Or does it tell it? No, it does tell it. We were on my last diagnosis, which was finally bipolar 1. So I had gone from anorexia to general anxiety disorder to major depressive disorder to ADHD to OCD, and then the two together, and then bipolar 2 and bipolar 1.
Mhm.
And so I'm at bipolar 1, and I was chronically suicidal at that point. So I had been chronically suicidal for 5 years. I couldn't live independently. I was living with my mother, and I was really in a bad place. I had just moved out of my mother's, and my sister found me a new psychiatrist, and I went to go see her. Again, it was sort of winter, but it was February, like cracking cold. And I went to see him. And so typically, when you go to a psychiatrist, you have that intake. And at the end, I waited for him to reify the diagnosis, the bipolar diagnosis, or give me a new one. And he looked at me and he said, I don't know what you have. And it just blew my mind.
Mhm.
And so that moment, once, and then he's a hardcore biopsychiatrist. So he is really in favor of psychiatry. He thinks it's the most noble profession.
Mhm.
And he said the DSM is a joke. Like, these diagnoses are a joke. Now, he doesn't take insurance, so he could do this. But he when he said that to me, I thought, I have to go research. I said, no one knows what I have. And so I just had to go research everything. And that's how that started. And it came into the book later. So I hadn't started the book when I started researching.
So like what year was that conversation?
So that was 2018. Is that right? I've been recovered for 5 years. Yeah. And that was when my recovery started.
So all this like stuff had been swirling around for a few years before the book
Yeah. Yeah.
in your personal trying to figure it
Yes.
out. That's kind of nice that you took a little break before being like, okay, I must write about this thing.
Yeah.
We're so like that about our own lives. Like, oh, material,
No,
let's
I
go.
didn't do that.
Okay, so you've got these 3 threads. How did you think about the book structure? You seem like a very structure kind of forward
Putting it
person.
mildly, yes. Yeah, I'm so, working on my new book. I am working on a new book, and it's so like, oh my God, it's got to be structured. I have to know exactly what it is. And of
Uh-huh.
course, I don't know. But so yes, so I knew, I knew it was going to be those three. I wrote it as those three strands from the beginning. But the long reads essay did not have mental illness in it, even though the time period that I wrote
Mhm.
about had that. So the version that's in Pathological is different from the version that was in long reads.
So you just kind of charted it out and then you wrote it so fast. So you just were in the whole process, just fast and furious.
I mean, yeah, and it's funny because I'm not sure what my new book will be, but both of my books thus far have been narrative. And
Uh-huh.
Mari and I talk a lot about this, and she's actually my book coach. And I said, we were talking, and she said, well, you had the story before. Of course, it was easy, right? You have the narrative, you already know how it
Uh-huh.
ends. It's kind of easy.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so basically, I had the narrative through line. I had the 13 punctuation marks. And then for each narrative, I basically chunked it by diagnosis. So all I had to do was plug in the research for each diagnosis. It was very much laid out for me. With Cured, which is my second book, but I serialized it on Substack, and that's a whole other story. But that one, I have different strands too, and it is my story of mental health recovery. So it has those three strands again, but this time it's the recovery movement and the history of it from the 16th century. And then the other side of it is the tools that I use to get well. Not as a like doctor prescribing, but just the things that really allowed me to heal.
And do you think of Cured as ongoing in a way too, or does it have like a finite end?
Such a good question, because that is the perennial question, which is how do you know if you've recovered? Now, my psychiatrist has christened me cured, so I did get the
Amazing.
green light recently, but for a long time I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want anyone to say no, 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 you can't, because we don't really talk about mental health recovery, and a lot of people don't even know it's possible. I didn't until my psychiatrist told me about a patient of his who'd recovered, and I was like, "What are you talking about?" And so there's personal recovery and there's clinical recovery. And this is something I learned
Uh-huh.
writing it. I didn't know this at the time, but it used to be your psychiatrist has to say you are cured, right? And we wouldn't use the word cured because that does I use it in the sense of the verb that we are ongoing curing people. Like being cured was a very long process. But so we used to have that the clinician decides, and it was always the alleviation of symptoms or the sort of diminishment of symptoms. And then there's personal recovery, which means I have created a life in which I am thriving. And that is what thriving means to me. It does not mean I'm a Google executive. It does not mean I have 4 kids and a nice car or whatever it's going to be. That
Mhm,
is not
mhm,
thriving necessarily. It could be that I still enjoy gardening. It could be that I have 2 cats and I'm a wonderful mother to them or
mhm.
whatever it might be. So when I learned that, it helped me see, oh, wait, I just have to create the life that keeps me well. Oh, okay, I
Oh,
can do
I
that.
love that.
Yeah, I don't have to even and you're not gonna get rid of the symptoms because anxiety, mania, depression, and even psychosis sometimes can be considered part of the human experience. So there's no escaping them. I have panic attacks, I have terrible anxiety. I don't
Uh-huh.
struggle as much with depression now. Sometimes I think it's funny because I'm writing an essay about not crying. I don't think I cried for 4 years, and the reason is I decided I cried so much that I, like, extinguished.
You were just like,
I'm done.
"Done?"
Like, my body's like, "We never need to cry again." But yeah, so knowing that, then I got to create this life, and it is not what you would think. I don't travel. I don't like to travel. It offsets me in a way that
Uh-huh.
I don't like. I love my cats. I love being home. I do
Mhm.
not go out often. I walk. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't eat chocolate. I don't, I'm like, don't do all these things. I don't want to be in a romantic relationship. I admitted on NPR that my closest social structures are my cats. And so that
Mhm.
is like admitting to the world that I'm a cat lady, a childless cat lady. Yeah, me and Taylor Swift. But so yeah, so basically it's been, if only people knew that. I was sick and mental illness is very real and I'm always very clear about that. But if I had known, oh, I don't have to do these things, I could actually create
Uh-huh.
a very different life and be okay. Probably would have been a different story. I can't say that, but I would think maybe it would be a different story.
So, yeah, I mean, I definitely have had ED
Yeah.
stuff, and so I was gonna ask you that question in terms of that too, because it's also like you have to eat food. So it's like, I don't know if being cured like, to me, it's like, I don't know if I'm capable of having a totally normal relationship with food where, like, I don't think about it in any sort of weird way
Yeah.
ever. I don't think that's like it's like, can I feed myself without, like, going down a neurotic spiral? That's more my, like, my
Yes,
gauge.
and that's where I was that felt like being cured actually to me for a long
Yes.
time, like, that was enough for me, and it's so funny that you say that because just today, I eat nuts now. My mother has gotten sick, and so I'm, of course, like, eating walnuts because it's supposed to be good for brain health.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm, like, massively eating walnuts, and what I realized was, "Wait a second, now I'm eating for health. How interesting."
Uh-huh.
And before I would have never eaten nuts because it's so fattening, or whatever it is. And
Oh.
just not that I was afraid of fat, like you said, I had gotten to a place where I was like passively neurotic about it. Like I was okay, but I
Yeah.
had little flare-ups sometimes, but the flare-ups
Uh-huh.
always were kind of harkening back to anorexia. And so it stays with you. I mean, especially if you have it young. I mean, it just stays with you and it is very hard. I don't even think we escape it. You know, Body image stuff, very hard. But I'm 52. So at some point it had to, I hoped it was going to go away. And now it does feel like it's definitely different because you can be neurotic about being healthy too.
Totally. And well, you talk about that a little bit too in the book with the exercise.
Yeah, and I have that in me too.
Yeah, no, just one more thing on that is, so I'm 40 and I'm like at the point where I'm like, okay, am I gonna have a kid, maybe one kid? But it's the ED stuff is making me so crazy. I'm like, maybe I would just pay $100,000 to have a surrogate. I know that's psycho, but I'm like, I really value not losing control of my body. Anyway, I'm writing about this now,
Yeah,
but it's a whole thing. And I have considered myself cured or
yeah,
whatever for 15 years, but I'm like, oh, this is a major threat.
yeah. And I mean, the other thing about it, which I think is interesting, is like me being cured. Like, is that so neurotic or crazy? I mean, it is. I've never wanted children. So I look at pregnant women and I am like, that is the most alien thing I have ever seen. I'm like, that is nothing. There's nothing normal about what you're doing to your body. Like, but now, meanwhile, everyone says, and even my mom said it the other day. She said, "Oh, I look at baby carriage, and I think I did that. And as a woman, you have to do that." I'm like, "No, you don't. No, you really don't. You're perfectly fine." And I've worried about it. When I was 30, one of my friends was really close friend in New York was 58, and she said, "You're going to regret it. You're going to regret not having kids." Now, I have said I don't want kids since I was 13 years old. I told my mom that I wasn't going to have kids. And so I have known deeply. And I still thank goodness no child had to suffer through me in my very lucky. I saved some creature a lot of pain. But so yeah, so just thinking about like I don't know, is that so wild in the sense of I don't know. Maybe it's okay to think that. Like, I don't want something occupying my body. It's like, is it okay to want to be with my cats more than I want to be with people? Maybe.
Totally.
Maybe it's okay.
I think, yeah, the conversation should be broader than it
Yeah.
is. It is like a major thing. Anyway, we could probably talk for an hour about that. Okay, so the publishing journey for this sounds like it went super fast
Mhm.
then. That was just like 6 weeks and you sold the book? Is that what you're saying?
It was basically, well, so we went to market it to sell it in April, like mid-April, and we sold it like late May. So yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
it was really fast. And considering I didn't think we'd sell it because it was the pandemic, but it sold really, I don't want to say easily because, you go to 22 houses and 22 publishers. So it's brutal. I mean, 20 people passed. I don't want to make it sound like I was the hottest ticket in town. I mean,
It
I
only
was very
takes
lucky.
one.
I
It
got
only takes one.
Yeah, no, I mean, I got a huge book deal. Like it was all great, but I think sometimes people think it is very hard to keep getting turned down. And then when we sold it, when we kind of knew when people were already interested, my agent said, "Do you want me to stop telling you that if other people pass?" And I said no, because I wanted to hear what the criticisms were of it. And they aren't really criticisms because when people are passing, it just means I don't know how to sell this. That's what they're really saying. And I think people when I learned that, it was much easier. And so I was curious why they thought they couldn't sell it or what they thought was problematic in terms of selling it. No one said there was a problem
Mhm.
with the writing or the thing. It was just like, no, we don't know how to do this. Or, there's some aspect like the punctuation. We don't think that's going to sell.
So then was fact checking hard? I want to know about the revision. It sounds like you did a little revision. And then what was the fact checking process?
We did a lot, actually. My editor was very hands off. I think I had one editorial letter. That was it. Just one editorial letter.
Oh,
But she was the one who said, why don't, it was not so focused on the DSM. And she said, why don't you just go all in on the DSM? And so I did, for better or worse. I don't know if that was good or bad, but and I think I know it focused the book. So then, yes, the fact checking was intense because they don't do it for you. They don't do even really any editing for you. I mean, I was shocked this is HarperCollins. This is a great publishing house, and it's not them. This is just the norm now. They don't have the time and they don't have the people to do it. So I hired a fact checker. I actually wrote about this for Poets and Writers about the fact checked memoir and what that means. I was less concerned with fact checking me because so much of the book, and this was very intentional, is just me. I don't write about other people. It's very focused on my experience. And part of that was artistic and part of it was just personal. So the artistic choice was I was completely isolated during that time. And I think anyone who struggled with mental illness knows that feeling of like, I am just totally cut off from the world. And so that felt very true to that experience. Like someone said to me, but your mom never really comes into focus. And I said, I know. So that's exactly what it's like. You've gotten the experience of it. But then the other part of it was just personal in that my family did not want me to publish the book. They thought it would ruin my life. And it could have been true. Once it was successful, they were like on board. But before they were just worried. And so they did say and so they didn't ask to be in the book. So I felt like I had to also leave them out. So there was just a lot of those choices to make. So I didn't feel like I had to fact check my memories or when things happened. I mean, I keep a crazy calendar, so a lot is on there. Early days, I mean, what happened when I was 12, I couldn't get those records. I did try from Northwestern, but the eating disorders clinic has since closed. So again, there was that stuff. But all of my other medical records were all accessible. And then,
amazing.
Yeah, so that was not a big deal. And I didn't really worry about that. I also have a terrible memory. So anything that comes to me comes pretty whole cloth. And I think, okay, it's got to be right. Because, but I did check. So 2 people I've been in relationships with are in it. And they both got to read it. And I said I would take anything out. My mother got to read it. I said I would take anything out that she didn't want. And everybody was fine with all of it. But what I was really fact checking was everything I said about the DSM. It had to be impeccable because I was making strong claims. And a lot of people do think that diagnoses are perfectly, they're medical and they're scientific and just what I thought. So I had to make sure it was absolutely perfect. And that took a lot. And then, so me fact checking it, I hired a fact checker. I had hired 2 editors.
Oh.
Yeah, it was a lot. 3 editors, actually, and a proofreader.
People don't talk about that a lot, but that's the reality, I think. Did they pay for a legal read?
Yeah. But what it is, and this is what someone warned me about, is that it's actually a legal read for them, not for me. So it is not, I mean, I'm sure that they think about it, but it's really about if they'll get sued, not if I will. But I did form an LLC before it came out, so I was protected. Supposedly, it doesn't really protect you that much, but I did it anyway.
So then it came out during the pandemic. Tell me about what you did to promote it.
Oh, we did so much. So I did, you have an in-house publicist, but these days you are really expected to hire an independent publicist, even if you're at a major house. Now, no one told me to, but that was kind of the underlying expectation. Everyone I knew who had a book coming out with a major house was hiring someone. So I just felt I had to do it. And I did, and I got burned really badly.
Oh, no.
She got nothing. She charged $24,000. And she got me 2 minor podcasts. It was brutal. And so I did fight, and I got some of them. I got about 8,000 back.
Good for you.
But I could have fought more, but I didn't. But there's no, like them and Weathermen, like they don't have to deliver. They don't have to deliver correctly.
I know.
There is no obligation to deliver. And it is the craziest thing when you think about it, that anyone does it. But I will say this, so I don't want to like slam independent publicists, but then I was in a bind. This was, a month before the book came out. And so I'd fired her and I got some of the money back. And then I did go to another publicist, and they got me a slew of podcasts. I mean, they got me a ton.
Oh, amazing.
They were wonderful. And this is, 40A. I can promote them because they're really great. And they were very nice. They were not taking any clients, and they made an exception because of my agent. And it was just really, they were wonderful. And so they got me a lot. But I will say that what moved the needle on the book in a visible way, in the way that publishers view it, was I was on NPR's 1A, and I was on television. I was on a local news show in Chicago. And those had the biggest like barometric effect of like, we could see the jump. you know? But
Amazing.
the problem is, but to 40 Years credit, they got me a ton of podcasts, and that's evergreen. Like that it's perennial. It just keeps going. Who knows when someone's going to find a podcast?
Exactly.
And so that is what I'm trying to tap into on Substack. And it's another kind of pet passion project of mine, which is how can we help authors sell their backlisted books? And Pathological is having a very long life. It is a perennial book. It's not dated in any way. Medical students are reading it now. I was just asked to do grand rounds at a hospital, which means you go and talk to doctors to tell them about your lived
Uh-huh.
experience. And then plus all my readers on Substack are suddenly finding
Yeah.
Pathological. So it's having this really beautiful long life. And that's what I want to see more of, and being able to give authors that, and maybe hopefully changing the way publishing works.
Let's talk about Substack for a second. So you weren't on Substack when the book came out. Did you get on right after?
No, I was on it. So basically, ended up on there just like so many writers, which is that the marketer at HarperCollins said you have to start a Substack. So I went and started a Substack. I didn't know what I was doing. I just had a kind of premise, which was start with a question, and I would just
Mhm.
ask a question, then I would answer it. I asked it.
Mhm.
And it was great. It was really good. I mean, I really enjoyed writing it. I came over with like a 300-person email list. And I think I did not get one new subscriber the entire time I was on there. This
Oh.
was pre-notes, and we just didn't grow in the same way. But then my agent introduced me to the head of writer relations at Substack. She sat down with me, kind of went through my Substack, said, change this, change this, change this. This is something they do when they usher big writers and big names onto the
Uh-huh.
platform. They kind of tell them what works on the platform and what doesn't. Now, it's nothing that they're hiding. It's not like private information, but it is what I do with one-to-one clients, which is it's just very different to have someone who knows what works on the platform sit down with your
Mhm.
Substack, look at your gifts, talents, and expertise, and kind of go through it and say, oh, what if you tried this, this, and this? And so she did, and I made all the changes, and I grew by like 2,000 subscribers in 6 months. It was just
Amazing.
incredible. Then I started Substack Writers at Work because I went to them and I said, can I teach this? I mean, I'm a teacher. And I was like, can I share this with people? And they said, of course. They would meet with all of us individually. They're the coolest people and the most wonderful people. So then I started Substack Writers at Work, helping people on the platform, and I love doing it. And then I started one-to-ones. They set me up to do that, which was really great. I would never have done it if they hadn't set me up to do it. And then now it's just continuing to snowball.
And then cured too, like then having that knowledge, is that how you were like, okay, I should just serialize this other project?
Partly. I mean, my part of my PhD was on the serialized novel in the 19th century. So I'm a
Oh.
big Dickens fan, and I love the serialized form. So initially, like you'll see on the URL, Substack Writers at Work was originally, I was just going to teach serialization. And then I realized, wait a second, this is really narrow, and I would love to just help people on the platform. So I broadened it. But it started, there's a lot in my archive on serializing on Substack, but then broadened out. And so, yeah, so Cured came about because I wrote it as a manuscript. HarperCollins had optioned my second book. And so we went to them and they passed on it. And so that happens often. Part of it was too much like Pathological, was how they felt.
Mhm.
And that's not a bad thing. It was just that they felt like, okay, we didn't really know how to sell this book. And so we're not going to be able to sell this book either. So thanks,
Mhm.
which is really great for them to say. So then I thought, so basically my agent and I decided, and my editor at HarperCollins was incredibly supportive and wonderful. They're wonderful at HarperCollins. I have no complaints. It's more the publishing industry that I feel like is kind of a mess. But so they both were really encouraging about why don't you serialize it on Substack? So I did. But
Oh.
my idea was, okay, we'll show proof of concept and then we'll go sell it. So this past May was when that was going to happen, like April, May. And there's been a turn, and basically publishers are really wary about publishing any mental health memoirs. So you'll still see memoirs, mental health memoirs coming out, but like right now with social media, mental health influencers and a lot of misinformation, supposedly people just aren't buying them. And so
Uh-huh.
we did not go out with cured, which is kind of okay with me actually. So now I'm just kind of moving on to my next book. And who knows, again, I was way ahead of the curve on Pathological, meaning right now, I actually just watched like one episode of a sitcom that just came out. It's called The English Teacher.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Jordan Bryan Alvarez.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And what's so funny about it is like they make fun of the students giving themselves diagnoses. And I was like,
No, I'd stand up
"Whoa,
about it.
this
Yeah.
is this is in the mainstream. Like, wait a second."
Yeah.
And I do feel that. Like, we have just seen everything I hoped to prevent has happened. Like, I am the canary in the coal mine, and no one listened to me, which is now you've got kids on social media diagnosing themselves. It's all like become diagnoses are in the hands of the public. It was never meant to be like that. They're very shaky, so only a professional should be doing them. So I feel like Pathological is having its day. And I actually just relaunched it. So I am
Uh-huh.
doing publicity for Pathological right now and probably will forever because I don't know that there should be something called a launch. And so I feel like Cured will be ready in like 3 years because people don't want to
Yeah.
say that it's possible to recover, which is sort of fascinating too.
Can you give us like the broad idea of your next book?
Yeah. So and again, I don't know what this will be, but my mother sadly was diagnosed with dementia. And so it's accelerating very
I'm
quickly.
sorry.
And it's just like her descent has been, I mean, they say this pretty much everyone says this about dementia and Alzheimer's is gradually and then suddenly. It has felt sudden, like it started in January and it is like falling off a cliff. But it has been really fascinating. I mean, she's a wonderful, brilliant woman, like my favorite person on earth. She's still
Uh-huh.
herself 100%. But, now we're like moving her into a care facility and all of that.
Uh-huh.
Facility always sounds so bad. It's not that bad. It's a lovely home. It's a residence. It's like an apartment. But anyway,
Mhm.
where she can have care. So I was just very interested in kind of this idea of curing, like here we were given this
Mhm.
diagnosis and is there any hope? And I have been very much addicted to hope. And it's very on and off and for her. And so I'm like, I don't, and then, it's not going to be that bad. And then it is. And my sister's been like dark, dismal, like this is just going to get worse.
Uh-huh.
And it is, but it's been fascinating too, because Alzheimer's, my mother has like the plaque decay in her brain. They showed it to us. She had a
Uh-huh.
stroke years ago. They can show us the damage. But they were very careful. And they said, which is what I always wanted with mental health diagnoses, which is they said, we were giving her the diagnosis of dementia, but you have to realize this is not a firm diagnosis. We really don't have a way of proving any of this, right? And
Oh.
Alzheimer's too, they said we think the underlying cause is Alzheimer's. We do not know. We have no definitive test. There is supposedly a spinal test now, but my mom does not want to get it. And there's gene work, but there are people who can still get it without the gene and et cetera. So,
Yeah.
but it's just been fascinating that they were so careful because I said, I'm really worried about her becoming this. I don't want her to think of herself as someone with dementia. And this was early
Uh-huh.
on. And they were like, yeah, we don't want her to either. That can be very, very debilitating, which is exactly what happened to me with diagnoses and me starting to
Uh-huh.
identify with them. So, I think it's more of a, an essay or I don't know if it's a full length book really, but this first year and how fundamental it's been in terms of how are we going to deal with this and what diagnosis are we going to go with and all of that. But so that was what I was thinking, but I'm really not sure. It's hard. I've never been in a position where I didn't know what my next book was. And now I really don't know what it is.
Even if this doesn't wind up it sounds like it could definitely be a book, but like giving yourself the like extra project of it as like a way to research your hope or
Yeah.
whatever, there's something kind of beautiful to that too.
It was going to be a history of hope. And what's really fascinating is I don't know if you've ever seen Google Ngram. Have you ever played with
Mm-mm.
that? Oh,
Mm-mm.
you can cancel your plans tonight because that's what you'll do. It's so fun. So it's N like the letter and then gram. It's what Google, so in their corpus of books, they've, millions and millions of books, they allow you to search the frequency of a word usage. So how popular a word has been over time. So you can search from like
Oh.
1800 to I think 2020 is the latest. I mean, it's 2022 is the latest time. And it will show you like what years people were using the word hope more or less, or you can do
Oh.
Frankenstein, like you can do any word. And what's fascinating is hope just was used and used and used. And then in 2004, it just fell off. It was never used. And hopelessness too. Like no one used it. And it's really
Interesting.
fascinating because even for Obama's campaign, the Audacity of Hope campaign, it didn't really come back into the vernacular. But it is coming back because I've heard people using it a lot since, Kamala's, I almost said inauguration or nomination. Haven't even gotten the inauguration yet.
Hopefully. Oh my God. Okay. Amazing. Well, I hope good things for that. And please come back and talk to me about that when it happens. Actually, before we do the final little run, I would love it. You are the Substack queen. You get into the nitty-gritty, but what's some more big level philosophical stuff about Substack tips?
See, that's what I love, actually. So Substack has completely transformed me as a human, and it's transformed so many of my clients. Like it's made me far less jealous of other writers. It's made me way more supportive. It's made me just a better human. And I think because it's such a supportive environment. So I really see being on Substack as this incredible personal growth transformation opportunity. I know that sounds woo-woo, but I really mean it. I think it is just incredible how much I've seen people grow and develop who had so much insecurity and really felt like I'll never, this is not for me. I just had a client and one of her posts just went viral. And she had come on and she said, I'm a playwright. Like, I don't, I'm a screenwriter. I don't know how to do this. I'm not going to do it. It's never going to work. And it took a year for her to get her stride. So I think that's part of it is give yourself time. Substack is a long game. Like, it is a long game. And that is a beautiful thing. So I always think, make Substack your home, make it you. That is the only trick is that it's 100% you. But the main thing is really knowing you do have to focus. You just do. It's just much easier to grow. So many people just want to get on and write. That was what I did. And it's really not very easy to grow that way. So if you can have a focus of some sort, now it doesn't necessarily have to be, it doesn't have to be the genre you're writing in. So it doesn't have to be journalism or health and wellness or whatever it might be. It could be. But it also might be a theme or it might be a mode, like start with a question. Like you have to have something to root people in instead of just throwing your writing out into the void.
Like Courtney's Substack.
Yeah, exactly.
I see so many of those where it's like, come on, give me a name. Just give me a name.
Throw me a bone on this. Exactly. And I always say the title. So it's your about page. And I have a lot on this on Substack Writers at Work. Your about page is a rite of passage. If you know what you're about and you can articulate it to someone else in your about page, your short description and your title, you're on your way.
Amazing. Do you have any bucket list writing goals?
Well, yeah. So I'm, just again, I think having my Substack, so I'm giving more attention to my author Substack and trying to have that really built. But I've just been submitting more. So I just submitted an essay and working on a new essay. So doing more freelance is basically, I think, more realistic. And maybe that's okay for a while even, instead of putting the pressure of a book on myself.
Yeah. And I heard you say, you're like, forget the other goals. I got a revenue goal. Like that's
it is right now. I mean, because I was sick for so long, I just did not save for my old age. And being with my mother and my father and my stepmother, it is obnoxiously expensive to get old in this country. It is shameful. It really is. I cannot believe that people aren't outraged. I didn't know. I didn't realize. But, you're talking $13,000 a month for a nice place to live. That's outrageous. That is unbelievable. Like no one can afford that. So either you have to stay in your home, which means you have to stay healthy and you can't have anything go wrong. And we're living a long time. And so I am hardcore saving. Every penny I make goes to my old age.
Well, I love hearing writers say that they have like a money goal because sometimes we can get in the headspace of that's like gauche or what. It's like, no, it's not. It's like, we need that.
I'm such a little capitalist. Poet in New York is now. And what's so funny is I love it for other people more than I love it for myself. I mean, it is weird. I just have found this space where I get to other people's success. It gives me so much joy. I cannot even tell you. And way more than my own, which is, I don't think there's anything like psychologically wrong with me with that. But it's so cool to watch people succeed. And I feel like part of it is I just think I'm putting money in the hands of really good, talented people. That's been my experience across the board on Substack. Now, if it were people I didn't believe in or I didn't, but every single person I've worked with has been a phenomenal human. And the idea of giving them money, like, why should Jeff Bezos have as much as he does? There's just,
Exactly.
let's give it to other people.
Yeah. What's one piece of writing advice you wish you could give your former self?
I think it would be that working hard, I worked really hard, that working as hard as you are is going to pay off. And you need the confidence too. Like, I was missing confidence. Confidence as a writer is everything. I mean, there are so many people, and you can see it on Substack too. They are not tremendous writers. You do not have to be a tremendous writer to communicate well and move people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's style and pretty sentences, all for it, love it. Don't anybody get mad. But that is not actually going to necessarily reach the most people. So I think that's what I definitely would have said that, which is you've got to have the confidence and you've got to have more resilience. Like, that is just everything. And I was so sensitive and I was so waiting for someone to come and sweep me up and do everything for me. And it just, like, that doesn't happen.
What's one tip for writers trying to get a book published?
Get on Substack.
Yeah.
Really, everyone, your agent or your editor is probably going to tell you to get on anyway. But mailing lists sell books more than social media does. So right now, and this is just from my agent, is like, a publisher's just not impressed unless you have 1 million followers. They're just not.
Social media does not convert anyway.
It doesn't convert anything anymore. And so having that in mind is like, just don't waste time on social media. And Substack is a great place to, again, you're showing your chops. You can get editors interested. There are agents on the platform all the time. There are editors on the platform all the time. And that's just a place for a writer to be right now.
All-time favorite piece of your own writing?
Pathological. Yeah, really, when I go deathbed moment, it's like, okay, I did my work on this planet.
Uh-huh.
I did Pathological. I did Cured. I said what needed to be said. And that is my deathbed consolation, for sure.
It's a wonderful, wonderful book. Yeah. How can listeners connect with you online?
Substack. I've actually moved. My website is on Substack. I am not on any other social media platforms, and it is wonderful to be centrally located. That is, by the way, a marketing technique. So they either say be everywhere or be one place. So I am one place. And so you can find me on Substack. So if you want to learn about Substack, go to writersatwork.net. And if you want to find my author stack, go to curedthememoir.com.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of The Bleeders. Writing is so much better with friends. I'm your host, Courtney Kosak, and hey, let's connect on social media. I am at Courtney Kosak. Last name is Kosak. I am on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Blue Sky, all the places, so find me there. And make sure you're signed up for the Bleeders Companion Substack for all kinds of newsletter exclusives. There is a link to subscribe in the episode description. I send out awesome stuff to my free subscribers, and I also have a paid subscription where I take you behind the scenes of all my best bylines. I've written about my return to stand-up comedy and how I got ready to crush my first showcase, my MFA and whether or not I think it is worth it. And I also have some mini workshops behind the paywall that are freaking awesome. So again, there is a link for the newsletter in the episode description. I encourage you to check that out and join me again next week for an all-new episode. In the meantime, happy bleeding!